Hey everyone, it's Tony here from LFA. Today I'm coming to you with After Effects and doing what'll hopefully be the first of many tutorials on little fun stuff. Um, so up until now, if you've been watching any of LFA's videos, you may have noticed that I've been doing fairly basic animations to make the videos interesting by taking their built-in effects in After Effects that I can show here, such as audio spectrum and audio waveform, which you can drop into a scene and you can parent it to an audio file. And I can show that part too at the end. It's a fairly simple setup, but these are really the only built-in effects that can be synchronized with an audio track. But what my teacher and I figured out today is it's a slightly more complex process, but we can actually synchronize any animation within After Effects to a piece of audio, whether it be text, whether it be a shape layer, whether it be an effect, like one of these. And almost just about any keyable attribute you have for that layer, you can synchronize it to audio. So I'll demonstrate that, and hopefully you'll see the potential of this effect, because it could be, or of this process, because it could be quite interesting. So first I'll create a new composition. Doesn't matter the size or the name for that matter, because this is just for demonstration purposes. Over here I got my text, because I'm just going to make some sample text. By the way, if you are wondering why there's a tiny little black bar underneath After Effects on the left half of this video, that's because I'm running dual screens and they're not the same size. The left screen is a little bit smaller. So yeah. That's also why my desktop looks very wide. So I'm just going to import a piece of audio. And why not? I'll import one of my last songs from my upcoming album. Music. Here we go. Already got all the chapters organized. And here we go. So first things first, I'm going to drop the audio into my timeline. So I've got the audio on a layer, and I'll just play that back briefly. First I'll show you the waveform. If I come in through these arrows, this gives me editable attributes, and here we can see the waveform of the song. So essentially, whatever we tell this waveform to control, the high points of the waveform will make it the maximum value, and the low points of the waveform will bring it back towards minimum value. I'm just going to start about here, and so as you can hear, the audio's in and it works. Sometimes the audio doesn't import correctly, and you'll have a weird icon over here. So it is good to check that. So I'll just create some text. We'll call this sample text, because we're doing this for science, and science does not require specifics. And so now we have a text layer down here that we created with sample text. And for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to automate the opacity of the text. If I come here to transform, I have my transformable attributes. And we have opacity, which is essentially transparency, visibility. At 100% opacity, it's true color, and it's fully opaque. Nothing can be seen through it. If I tone it down, it begins to disappear. And normally, excuse me, normally if we want to animate this manually, we come over here and click on the keyframe icon, which creates a keyframe at its current value, and then I move along somewhere else in my timeline to wherever I want the animation to change. I enter a new value, say 0, and it automatically drops in a new keyframe at the new value, and I've got a keyed animation of the text fading from 100% to 0%. But we want to sync, in this tutorial, we want to synchronize the text opacity with audio so that when the audio plays, the text opacity will change according to the audio amplitude. So let's get started. First step, why do I have an empty layer? That's weird. First step will be click on the audio, and don't need to see the waveform anymore for now. Animation at the top, keyframe assistant, convert audio to keyframes. Make sure you have the audio layer selected first when you do this. Convert audio to keyframes. And what this will do is it'll create a new layer called audio amplitude. And what this does is it allows me to, and I can adjust how big it is in my timeline. Essentially, it's just a controller. I go here to effects, and I have left, right, and both channels. What this represents is the left stereo channel, the right stereo channel, and both channels. Now, my teacher suggested this, and I agree with him. We don't really need the both channels or the right channel. The left channel will be ample enough. We only really need one channel to generate an effect. So here's our text. We have transformations. Oh, come down one more tab in the left channel, and we have a control slider. This slider is essentially controlled by the audio waveform height. So now I'm going to Alt-click or Option-click if you're a Mac person. I'll click on the keyframe icon, and this creates an expression transformation. Notice that this number becomes red. I'm not sure that that's really locked, but it means that it's being controlled by something else. And I can take this pick whip icon, and I'm going to click and hold and drag it to the slider up here of the left channel. So when I pick whip this to the slider, I've now parented this to the slider by this text, and this text code over here represents that. I'll just hit enter on my numpad, and you can also click off if you don't have a numpad. So now you can see, let me show you the waveform. You can see that as the waveform gets bigger, let me zoom in on this. There we go. As the waveform gets bigger, the text gets brighter, and as it gets smaller, the text gets darker, or it's actually getting more transparent. We just have a black background. So the audio is actually perfectly synchronized with the animation of the text opacity. So if I just play this back briefly, let me come back to my start of composition point and RAM preview it. Now, it's not very bright, and that's mostly due to the fact that the audio isn't necessarily hitting max amplitude very much, if at all, mostly very briefly. So, but there is a fix for that. Let me make this smaller again. It doesn't need to be that big. It's a very simple fix, actually. It's not as complicated as it seems. Over here in this code, I can type at the end of the list. Make sure it's all the way. Make sure your text bar is all the way at the end of this code. You don't want to mess with this code. I'm going to type asterisk 2. Asterisk computationally is represented times multiplication. I'm essentially multiplying the effect by 2. I can make that 2 any number, and it'll multiply it by the effect by that number. So now I'm going to click off, and now the text is significantly brighter. It's still not very bright, so I'm just going to do this by 4. And now we can see we have a really noticeable, at 0 amplitude, we have practically opaque, our text is practically gone, and at high amplitude our text is very visible. So we can see that the audio is indeed controlling the animation of this. Now, I can have it do other things, such as position. And over here I have an X value for the left and right position, and a Y value for the up and down position of the text on the composition. What I can do is, let's say I want my text only to slide left and right. I'm doing this just for demonstration purposes. If you want to do both, you can leave it. You can leave these two values together, but I'm going to right-click on this and click Separate Dimensions. So now I have separate controllers for X position and Y position. So now if I want this to control my X position, all I do is, again, Alt-click or Option-click for Mac on the keyframe icon, and I've created an expression. And now I click and drag, click and hold from the pick whip to the slider, and I parented it. And I'm just going to click off, and now you can notice that it's now also moving the X position. Now I'm going to change the position of this. My anchor point, as long as I don't mess with the anchor point, I can move the center of this. And I believe, no, I can't. The value is locked. So that's actually how that works. But you can see that it's actually transforming I may need to come into my graph view, graph editor. There it is. Maybe the graph editor doesn't change that. Well, anyway, the both effects are now tied to the amplitude of the song. So now when I play this back, as you can see, the effects are perfectly synced to the audio, and it's really just a couple of steps. I mean, it is a little confusing, but After Effects is fairly open-ended, and just about anything will be confusing until you figure it out. But it's actually just a few steps once you know what you're doing. And I can't wait to implement this into future videos and try stuff with it and see what I can do. And I hope that you guys find use for this, and that I've been able to help you out. Just as one other note, I was going to make another note. I'm trying to think of what it is now. Going to do the other effect. The other thing that, and there is other videos for this, but I'm just going to do it in this video so that you all get what I've done in previous videos in one video, as well as this new thing. Go here to Audio, in your Effects chooser. Actually, I'm going to pull this over here so I get a bigger list. And right here I have, oh, this is the wrong audio. I need generate. That's it. Audio spectrum or audio waveform. Audio waveform will generate essentially an oscilloscope view of the waveform that you see here that plays back in real time. Spectrum will actually create a spectrum analyzer. That's the proper term for a graphic EQ, which is essentially bars that rise and fall with frequencies. So my bass frequencies trigger the bars on the left side of the frequency analyzer if it's, not mirrored. And then the high frequencies will generate bars on the right side and everything in between. So I'm going to use audio spectrum. First, I'm going to create a new solid, which is your basic layer. And then I'm just going to drag this audio spectrum from the effects panel onto my composition, and it creates it. And I can change the colors, I can change the thickness of the bars. This is the edge color. I can change the start and end frequency that it's actually going to read from whatever audio I pick. And right here, audio layer, this is what it's actually going to read the audio from. So you're going to pick my audio layer, which in this case is my song, Mass Congruence. And I can change the thickness of this. Let's change it to 6 so you can see it a little better. I'm going to shrink this down. There we go. I'll make this 10. There we go. Now you can see it. And I can change the number of bands, so I can make this less bands, or the default is 64. That's fine. Let's do 60. Start and end frequency. Typically, you don't really need. The bass frequencies are the most noticeable and the most influential, partly because of how frequencies work. Low-end frequencies are vibrating slower, and they tend to be naturally louder than high-end frequencies, which is also why it's easier to boost bass using a subwoofer than it is to boost treble. Actually, I don't know if that's true. I kind of just made that up. But anyway, bass is generally louder, and so we generally don't need the really high end of. We're going to get more effect out of the kick drum. Now, sometimes in some of my other videos, I've actually created two spectrums. One that just has the bass to low-mid range of frequencies, and these are actually representing hertz, by the way, 20 hertz to 2000 hertz. And the other representing the treble range. So you actually see the two spectrums doing two different things. One triggers on snare and hats, and the other one triggers on the kick drum and toms and stuff like that. I'm just going to change this to 200 so that we can really see the kick frequencies come out. And as you can see, this audio spectrum effect is already, all I had to do was pick the audio layer parent, and it automatically synchronizes to our audio. So when I play this back, looks kind of funny. All right, so that's the idea. That's, in a nutshell, the basics of After Effects. I mean, if I wanted to add a background image to this, all I'd have to do is come back over to my, you can barely see it, Project tab, import a file. Let's have an image file. Let's find one of my LFA graphics here. Here we go. And if I wanted a background, all I'd have to do is drag this onto my composition. It's huge, holy crap. Drag this onto my composition, and I'm going to zoom out for a second so I can make this smaller. Switch back to my selection tool, And I should be able to just shrink this. And I'm also going to, in After Effects, the order of layers is the top layer is on top. So if I want my other things to show through this, switch back to the selection tool, just have to move this to the bottom of the list. And there we have a background image. So that would be very simple setup. The sample text looks really stupid because we didn't actually change anything to it or make it interesting, but basic animation with synchronized to audio. Two different ways. Your built-in effects that are already designed to be synchronized to audio, and then your manual creation of audio synchronization using expressions and that are parented to an audio amplitude channel. And that's it.